What if I told you that one of the most famous assassinations in history never happened? What if Julius Caesar, the man who brought Rome to its knees and then raised it to new heights, had survived the Ides of March? Today, we are diving deep into one of history's greatest what ifs. How would the world be different if Caesar had lived to finish what he started? Let's set the stage. By 44 BC, Gaius Julius Caesar was the undisputed master of Rome. He wasn't just a politician, he was a military phenomenon. His conquest of Gaul was nothing short of legendary. He faced down overwhelming odds, outsmarted entire tribes, and expanded Rome's borders dramatically. He was brilliant, ruthless, and adored by his soldiers. But his ambition unsettled the old guard in the Senate. When they ordered him to disband his army, Caesar made a choice that would echo through eternity. He crossed the Rubicon River with his legion, a direct act of defiance, and plunged the Republic into civil war. As he famously said, "The die is cast." He emerged victorious, of course. After defeating his rival Pompey the Great and his allies, Caesar returned to Rome not just as a general, but as dictator for life. He had absolute power, and he started using it immediately. He launched massive public works projects, reformed the calendar, yes, the Julian calendar we based ours on, and planned to grant citizenship to people in the provinces. He wanted to unify the vast territories Rome controlled into a more cohesive empire. He was a visionary, but to many powerful senators, he was a tyrant in the making, a king who would destroy the republic they held so dear. This brings us to that fateful day, the Ides of March, March 15th, 44 BC. In our timeline, a group of senators, calling themselves the Liberators, cornered Caesar in the theater of Pompey and stabbed him 23 times. His death triggered another bloody civil war, which ultimately led to the end of the Republic and the rise of his heir, Octavian, who would become the first Roman emperor, Augustus. But in our alternate history, things go very differently. Perhaps a loyal friend warns him with more urgency. Maybe his wife Calpurnia's nightmare convinces him to stay home. Or, let's imagine he goes to the Senate, but his guards are more alert. The conspirators make their move, but they fail. The plot is exposed. The assassins are caught, and Caesar survives. So, what happens next? The immediate aftermath would be a ruthless purge. Caesar was merciful to his enemies in the First Civil War, a decision that came back to haunt him. He wouldn't make that mistake again. The conspirators, Brutus, Cassius, and the others, would be executed for treason. Any remaining political opposition in the Senate would be silenced, either by fear or by force. Caesar's power would be absolute and unquestioned. The Republic, for all intents and purposes, would be officially over, not with a whimper, but with a clang of steel. With his domestic enemies eliminated, Caesar would turn his attention back to his grand ambitions. First on the list, Parthia. This was his great unfinished project. In our timeline, he was planning a massive invasion of the Parthian Empire, the only power that had ever truly humiliated Rome by defeating Crassus years earlier. A surviving Caesar, at the head of his veteran legions, would have been an unstoppable force. He would likely have conquered Parthia, extending Roman control all the way to the borders of India. Imagine a Roman empire stretching from the Atlantic to the Indus River. This victory would have brought unimaginable wealth and prestige back to Rome, solidifying his godlike status. But Caesar wasn't just a conqueror, he was a builder. He would have accelerated his reforms. He'd continue his massive building programs, creating jobs and beautifying the city. He would have likely pushed for even more radical land reforms, distributing land to his veterans, and the urban poor, which would have made him even more popular with the common people. He might have even tackled the systemic corruption that plagued the provinces, creating a more standardized and fair system of governance. He would have built libraries, funded the arts, and truly turned Rome into the capital of the world. Now, let's talk about the big question, the transition of power. In our timeline, Caesar's death created a power vacuum that his 18-year-old grandnephew, Octavian, masterfully filled. But Octavian had to fight a brutal civil war against Mark Antony and navigate treacherous political waters for over a decade. It was his genius for politics, propaganda, and administration that created the stable Roman Empire under the guise of a restored republic. He was the ultimate administrator, the perfect man to consolidate Caesar's conquests. If Caesar had lived another 10 or 20 years, this entire period of civil war would have been avoided. The Roman Empire would have been born directly from Caesar's dictatorship, without the bloody interlude. But who would succeed him? Caesar had a biological son, Caesarion, with Cleopatra of Egypt. Would he have legitimized him and made him his heir? This would have been a seismic event. A half-Egyptian heir would have been controversial, to say the least. It would have tied Rome's destiny directly to Egypt. Alternatively, Caesar might have formally adopted a successor from the Roman elite, perhaps even Mark Antony, or he might have tried to establish a hereditary dynasty through Caesarion. There would be no Augustus. The Julio-Claudian dynasty as we know it, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, would never exist. The entire political landscape of the next century would be completely different. The character of the Roman Empire would be forged not by the careful, calculating Augustus, but by the bold, ambitious, and revolutionary Julius Caesar. Would this Caesarian empire have been more militaristic, more autocratic from the start? It's hard to say, but it certainly would have been different. The legacy of a long-lived Caesar would have been monumental. With decades of peace and stability under a single, brilliant ruler, scientific and cultural progress might have accelerated. The infrastructure he planned, like a canal through the Isthmus of Corinth, would have been completed, revolutionizing trade. The codification of Roman law, which happened much later, might have been accomplished under his watch. Rome would have become an imperial monarchy in name as well as in fact far sooner, and the delicate pretense of the restored republic that Augustus maintained would have been swept away. So, a world where Caesar survives is a world without the second triumvirate, without the wars of Octavian and Antony, and without Emperor Augustus. It's a world where the Roman Empire is born faster, grows larger, and is shaped directly by its charismatic and revolutionary founder. Would it have been better? More stable? Or would Caesar's unchecked ambition have eventually led to ruin? That's a question that makes alternate history so fascinating. What do you think would have happened? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into a different past, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest what-ifs. Thanks for watching.